I am going to go ahead and begin. And the link, for those of you who are interested, the documents I'll be referring to in the chat bar is a link. You can use that link to download a set of the PowerPoint slides. And if one or two of you could continue to paste that into the chat bar when other people come in, that would be great. Because when folks come in, they can't see what was in the chat bar before. The other document that I will be referring to, just so you have seen it at least once, is this document, which all of you already received. No, not that document. Hopefully this document. Hopefully you can see that. It says links to resources playlists at the top. And that document was attached to the confirmation email. It's also publicly available at the sign up page. Just some links, and I'll be referring to those links because there's, really honestly, there's a limit to what I can share with you in the context of 90 minutes, but there's so many wonderful resources, and I've organized playlists. If there's a particular thing that's of relevance for you, you might want to take a little bit of time and take a look at those playlists. So I am going to begin, and I'm going to share my screen. Although I'm going to share the PowerPoint slides. Hopefully you all can hear me. If you are having difficulty hearing me, please let me know. I do welcome you to share in the chat bar, and at certain points I will be asking you to share in the chat bar. However, if you have a question, so that I don't miss it, please hold your question until I ask you to share questions in the chat bar, which I will do hopefully at the end, and if there's a little bit of extra time before then. Okay, so how's everybody been feeling? If you could describe in 1 or 2 words the way you've been feeling, I don't know, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, what would those 1 or 2 words be? Let me ask you to, if you don't mind, you don't have to, but if you like to type them in the chat bar, please go ahead. What have your primary emotions been? Your primary experience been over the last? Nueve niño, insecure, tired, stressed and anxious, sad. Yeah. Yeah. So it absolutely unsafe. So yeah, there's a whole range of ways that people can feel insecure and unsafe. People have been experiencing a lot of despair, hopelessness, disappointment, and frustration. Many people feel as though they lost the future. People have been feeling angry. Many people find themselves ruminating about not being safe or about possible dangers. There's all kinds of responses that people can have to an intense crisis, especially when we don't feel safe. And of course, this doesn't even include the effects of being traumatized. If you have been shot at or seen people injured or know that your friends are not safe or you yourself have not been safe, that can be in another category altogether. So what I'm going to talk about in this webinar is to help you understand how a normal human being reacts to events like this. When we're in danger, when we feel insecure or unsafe, we react in a certain set of predictable ways. When we see other people in danger, we react in a certain set of predictable ways. Plus, even if we're reasonably safe, we're not in immediate danger, if we have uncertainty, unpredictability, or uncontrollability, those have a big impact on us. And I'm going to talk about the kinds of reactions, because if we understand those reactions, there's ways that we can respond. For those of you who don't, I'm not sure that anyone in the session knows me. My name is Ben Weinstein. I am a clinical psychologist. I have been living and working in the Southeast Asia region for the last 18 or 19 years. I had the opportunity to work in Myanmar after Hurricane Nargis back in 2008 and after the Saffron Revolution of late 2007. And then I had some opportunities to work in Yangon again in 2011 and 2012. Unfortunately, I haven't had any big projects there in a while, but it's really a pleasure to offer this because I do a lot of support for organizations and for people who work in dangerous situations, who work in places like Iraq or Afghanistan or East Timor or Somalia or places like that all over the world. And I know a few tips that help people to bring out their best under very difficult conditions. And I hope that those will be useful for all of you and for people that you know. So we're going to talk a little bit about your nervous system. Because it helps if we understand ourselves. If we understand ourselves, it makes it a lot easier to go through something like this. When I say understand ourselves, I don't mean that you need to understand every little detail, but you do need to understand how this thing works, this brain and this nervous system, because it's really, really very important. But I'm going to try and keep it simple. I'm going to try and keep it simple and keep it concrete. So what you need to understand is that your brain and your body are not separate. Your brain and things that happen in your brain happen in your body. Things that happen in your body happen in your brain. They're deeply, deeply interwired. They're really not at all separate. And there's two systems that we're going to focus on that are very, very important, that are being impacted profoundly by any crisis. And these two systems, again, the technical names are the sympathetic nervous system, or some of you have heard the fight or flight. And the other one is the parasympathetic nervous system, but we're just going to call them the action system to keep it simple. We're going to call it the action system, and we're going to call it the rest and recharge system. Again, the basic element here is that psychology triggers physiology. And this is, you all have been experiencing this previously in your life, and very much since February the 1st and since March as the situation has deteriorated. When we feel threatened, the action system is activated to this kind of fight, flight, or freeze response. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And there's different levels of this. There's basic stress of everyday life, where we get stressed by something like being late for work, and then the threat is gone and the body goes back to normal. We have chronic stress, where we're exposed to stress every day, all the time. Our work is never finished, or there's a responsibility that we're loaded with and we've got to accomplish, and it goes on for weeks or for months, and we can get into a state of chronic stress. And this is, again, part of normal living. And then there's chronic stress. Chronic stress, I beg your pardon, there's crisis stress, where the system gets stuck. The system kind of gets stuck in a crisis state, and we're up and anxious and afraid or angry all the time. We might feel paralyzed. We might also feel like we have to be doing something all the time, like we can't sit still. And that's kind of crisis stress. It's not at all good for us. The most useful way to think about this is like an accelerator, like the accelerator in a motorcycle or the accelerator in a car. How this action system gets pressed, and sometimes it gets pressed and it gets released, and sometimes it gets pressed and it stays down. We stay in a state of physiological arousal. Now, what are the things that do that? The things that do that are, number one, danger. They amplify. Danger amplifies this response. If we feel unsafe or insecure, if we are unsafe or insecure, this can cause this body system to constantly always be going like an engine that's turning over. Even if the wheels are not turning, the engine is revving at a very high level. Plus, even if we're not in a danger at the immediate moment, when there's a high level of uncertainty or uncontrollability or unpredictability, when there's a lot of things happening, we don't know what's going to happen. We're not sure what's going to happen, like what's going to happen with my work. Are we going to have electricity tomorrow? Are we going to have water? What's going to happen with the government? All kinds of uncertainties. This can cause the action system to be triggered. And this can leave us kind of racing. And this is really important to understand what's happening inside your brain. Although I believe that all of us can recognize this. So there's two parts here of your brain that are important. One part is the part up here in orange, where it says learning and thinking. This is the part of your brain, in fact, neurologists and scientists call this the executive of your brain. like an executive in an organization. It organizes and makes decisions. This is where your good decision making, your good problem solving, your good planning skills, they all kind of live up here in this orange part, in this executive area. The green area is what folks call the limbic system. And that's basically where your emotions live. Your fear, your anger, any kind of intense feelings live in that green part. Now, they're not completely separate. Of course, they're wired together. And under ordinary circumstances, these two parts of the brain are good friends. Under ordinary circumstances, when we're doing well, when life is going well, our emotions influence our decision making, and our decision making and problem solving help to regulate our emotions. So when things are going well, they work together hand in hand. We need both. We need our logic and our decision making, and we need our emotions in order to live well. However, when the action system gets triggered, especially when it gets strongly triggered, progressively, these two stop talking to each other. And this is really important to appreciate. When we get afraid, when we get insecure or unsafe or really exhausted, and we get stressed, or there's a lot of uncertainty, our executive goes offline. Our good problem solving, our good decision making are no longer available to us. And importantly, we may not be aware of that. We may still believe that we're able to make good decisions. So in this, and this is, I really want to be clear, this is not anything that's abnormal. This is how a normal brain works. Emotions take over, and our thinking is driven by emotion at that moment. This is a normal human reaction to intense or crisis stress. We will have intense impulses to act, and to act right now. Many people will find it very difficult to sit still. This is this kind of fight or flight element. Some people will find themselves paralyzed and unable to act, which is the kind of freeze side of the response. I'm not going to go into details about those, but in the playlist, I believe number 3, there's more information about these responses. So there's another thing that happens, and this is kind of interesting, and I would like for all of us, because your brain focus gets narrowed when this is happening, when the executive's going offline and the emotions are taking over, when the action system is triggered, you can enter a very narrow state of attention, which is like we refer to as losing perspective. But it's actually very simple to understand. I'm going to ask you to do a little experiment. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment so that you can see me. And I'm going to ask you to do a little experiment. I'm going to have to move my microphone. Put your hands up right next to your eyes. I guess I can't see you, so I hope you're doing it. And just take a look around. This is what your brain's view is like when the action system is not triggered, when everything's going well. You have a clear view and you can see different things. Now, I want you to slowly close your hands. I want you to slowly close your hands and notice how the field of view is shrinking. You can't see everything anymore. I want you to close your hands until there's only a pinpoint. So now notice the view. Look around and notice. You're seeing things, but you're only seeing a narrow slice. You're only seeing a little bit of the total picture. Now open it up again, right? This is your brain when you're calm. Your brain sees a big picture, sees many things. This is your brain. Close it up again. This is your brain just seeing a tiny little slice. The classic example of this is when we're angry, right? When we get upset and we're angry, and we only focus on the individual or the situation that's making us angry. A day later or a week later, we are like, oh, I didn't see the whole picture at that moment. I was so angry, I couldn't see clearly. But sometimes we actually don't realize that when it's happening. And it's really important to understand that that's what's happening. Whether we realize it or not, when we're upset, when we're afraid, when we're scared, frustrated, angry, we are no longer seeing the whole picture. And that's how the brain works. I'm going to share my screen again. And we're going to learn some ways of dealing with this, right? Because when we're reasonably calm, we go back to a more balanced view of things, even if we haven't resolved the crisis yet. And this is the key, right? Sometimes we still have to make decisions even when the crisis has not been resolved. And it is possible to do that. It's very possible, especially if we just know a few simple tricks. And the main trick here is, I want to take us back to that second system that I told you all about. I said there were two systems. There was this action system, and there's the rest and recharge system. Okay? This system, I told you, the action system operates like an accelerator. This rest and recharge system operates like brakes. And you can intentionally activate it. You can intentionally press the brakes. And it's actually, human beings actually discovered this. I could put charts up here and I could show you the specific nerves that are being stimulated. We know the anatomy now, and we know the neurobiology now. Human beings actually discovered this thousands of years ago, and we're actually going to practice it right now. We're going to practice this kind of what we call parasympathetic breathing, right? But it's just, all you have to think about it is just breathe, right? So now we call this, we're going to practice a technique right now, and some of you may already be familiar with this. We're going to practice a technique that we call belly breathing. Now, of course, I hope all of you know that your lungs are up here. Your lungs are not down in your belly. But most of the time, we don't use our lungs full capacity. Your lungs are remarkable, and they have a remarkable capacity. And especially when the action system gets triggered, we do not breathe deeply. So when we do belly breathing, and I want to invite you, if you like, I'm just going to move my camera a little. I want to invite you to put a hand over your belly. And as you breathe right now, we're going to imagine that there's a balloon in your belly and you're breathing all the way down into your belly. That's all. But it doesn't have to be anything fancy. You don't have to do this. You don't have to go to a mountaintop and leave everything behind. All you have to do is breathe. So let's just try this. So let your hands be empty. If you're holding your smartphone, if you're holding another device or a pen, please let your hands be empty for a moment. Feel yourself sitting in your chair. Just feel yourself sitting in your chair, that's all. Maybe scan your body, kind of take a before snapshot. Take a before snapshot. And now we're just going to breathe for 60 seconds. Let me invite you to breathe in. Think of it as a full breath. And then exhale all the way. Breathe out all the way, but don't strain. Kind of trust your body. Your body knows how to do this. I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to breathe in and out 5 more times. Your eyes can be open, your eyes can be closed. Again, now take a moment, scan through your body again. Just feel yourself sitting here, and if you were breathing along with me, just take a moment and notice. Do you notice? And all we did was breathe for about 60 seconds. And again, I'd like to invite anyone who wishes to type in the chat bar. When you just sit and breathe for 60 seconds, do you notice anything in the energy of your body? Do you notice anything in the state of your mind or your body? Okay. I'm going to go on. So we can activate this kind of rest and recharge system. And I'm going to talk about, in the next section of the workshop, in about 10 minutes, we're going to talk about how to use this in daily life and how to combine it with some other techniques. We need to be aware of distress and helplessness when we're dealing with situations where there's a lot of uncertainty or many things are not under our control. Because when we feel afraid and we feel helpless, this can create distress, especially when we feel powerless, feeling like there's nothing I can do. This kind of feeling of helplessness is very bad for us. When we feel helplessness, when we feel like there's nothing we can do, that accelerator will be pressed down and will be constantly stimulated with stress. It's really very bad for us. And we're going to talk about how to avoid feeling helpless even when so many things are happening that are not under our control. The last element you want to be aware of in your brain is what we call emotional contagion. For a variety of reasons, human emotion is contagious. We've all had this experience. If you're talking to a friend or someone you like and they're very upset, you may start to feel upset as well. If you're talking to your friend and they're very happy and bubbly, you might start to receive some of that energy. Actually, our brain is designed this way. We have neurons, we have brain cells that actually pick up energy from other people. They're called mirror neurons. So the bottom line is your mind and body are going to be impacted by the emotions of the people around you when you are directly in conversation with them and in other ways as well, by emails, by videos, by social media. You are going to be impacted. In fact, you can think about these emotions as kind of waves moving through the whole community. And this is a situation like COVID, but even more so, that everyone in Myanmar is experiencing the crisis at the same time. So everyone is experiencing intense emotions at the same time. And it can create something that we call mass hysteria, which is like enormous waves of emotion moving through the whole community, like panic and fear. This is normal. It happens all over the world. In situations like this, it can make the situation even more dangerous because as a group, then people are acting without thinking. So it's really important individually to be aware when you are being affected by the emotions of other people and to have some sense of how to take care of those emotions so that you can bring out your strengths, so that you can bring out your good decision making, your good problem solving. I want to take a moment to just acknowledge that this is a terrible moment in the history of Myanmar. And things, I think, as someone who considers myself a friend of Myanmar, I think after 2010, we all had high hopes. We were all thought it was a movement in such a positive direction. And this is so disappointing, to say the least, and upsetting and frightening in so many different levels. And it's important to learn lessons from people who've gone through these things before, because this is not the first time in history that people have experienced terrible things and been able to face them and live through them and successfully surmount them. And I'm going to use an example from World War II, from the history of the United Kingdom, from September 1940 to 1941. This is the period when the German Air Force bombed the country, and specifically London, basically every single day without warning. So this is this is a picture from September 1940 after the first night of bombing, when the German Air Force bombed London. So you can see a double-decker bus thrown like a toy against a building, and buildings are leveled. And people lived through this for weeks and for months, not knowing if their building was going to be blown up in the middle of the night and they and their families were going to be killed. Again, you might recognize some of the feelings that you yourself have been experiencing. It was so dangerous that folks went down and they didn't sleep. Many people did not sleep in their homes. Many people would actually go and sleep in subway tunnels, in the tube of London. So what you see here is a station, and people are bunked out for the night. They are spreading out and they're getting ready to sleep down in the tube because it was safe. You'll also notice that there's only one child, and I don't know if you can, there's only one child in this picture. The children are all gone because the situation was so dangerous. They sent their children away to the countryside. And at the same time, they found ways to carry on. Here's a group of people, here are people going to work in the rubble of their city. And this is the British government at that time had psychologists and mental health professionals, and they consulted them, and they said to these mental health professionals, the population is exhausted, the population is afraid. What can we do to help encourage people and to inspire them and to help them figure out how to go on? And their psychologists and their consultants developed one of the most famous campaigns. You've actually already seen this because it became a meme several years ago. But it was originally developed during this bombing campaign in Britain, because this campaign helps people to bring their executive back online, even though the crisis has not been resolved yet. And it helps them learn how to manage and regulate their feelings. And of course, it's this famous "keep calm and carry on" slogan that was developed at that time for this purpose. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how that works. But this is something really important to remember. This is a situation that it is possible to get through, and that it is possible to get through it day by day. So I'm in the next part of the webinar, I'm going to share with you 6 or 7 different skills to use on a daily basis in order to manage this kind of when your action system is being activated moment by moment. And this is going to come in 2 forms. I'm going to give you what I call mental stamina frames, which are ways of thinking, attitudes that you can kind of intentionally try to use, and specific concrete skills. So the first mental stamina frame, and again, is this one. Again, if it was good enough for the people while their homes were being bombed, this might be something worth trying for all of us. Keep calm and carry on. We're going to talk about how to do this, how to keep calm and carry on, not just as a slogan, but as a specific thing. Because the frank fact is, you can't control all the risks and uncertainty in this situation. Nobody can. The most important thing that you individually can do is try to stay strong, take prudent action, and keep living your life as best you can. So the first skill I want to teach you is what we call anchoring your mind. Because as we said, when this action system gets activated and the mind, we get the narrowing of attention and the mind races away. So one of the most important things we can do is slow down our racing minds and try to come back. So psychologists call this anchoring, right? And I want you to think about your mind like a river. I want you to think about your mind like a river. And this river, sometimes it is very slow and smooth. And sometimes this river is very raging and fast. And if you're on a boat trying to navigate down this river, when the river is slow and smooth, it's easy to navigate. When the river is raging and fast, the boat just gets swept along. So we can learn how to anchor ourselves, and that helps to slow down our minds. We're going to use the soles of the feet. So what I'm going to invite you to do, and remember, this is all of these techniques, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later. Like all of these techniques, the purpose of these techniques is to regulate our minds and to regulate our emotions so that we can bring our executive back online. These skills do not necessarily solve every single problem, but they're meant to stabilize our minds so that we can bring out our strengths, our good problem solving, our good thinking, our good decision making, and not get overwhelmed by the normal emotions of this situation. So let me invite everybody to stand up. I'm going to stand up as well. Try and tilt my camera up a little bit. Let me invite you to stand up. Wherever you are, again, please let your hands be empty. What I'd like you to do, as you stand here, and again, it doesn't matter if you have eyes open or eyes closed, I want you to bring your mind down to the soles of your feet. So just feel the soles of your feet. It doesn't matter if you're wearing socks, bare feet, if you're wearing shoes, it doesn't, just feel the contact. Notice how the sensations of contact feel. It's almost like feeling the weight of your body on this spot. And what I want to invite you to do is very gently, very gradually shift your weight entirely onto your left foot. Shift your weight entirely onto your left foot and just feel that. Notice the shift of sensations. And now shift your weight back over onto your right foot. And again, notice how the sensations change. Sensations in your left foot change, and the sensations in your right foot change. I want you to just go back and forth. See if you can keep your mind with the soles of your feet. Just noticing how this feels. Your breathing will take care of itself. Just shifting back and forth, not fast, in a kind of gradual way, and feeling the soles of your feet. Okay. And now come back to the center. And I want you to lift up the heel of your right foot until just the toes touching the floor, and put it back down again. Lift up the heel of your left foot until just the toe of your left foot's touching the floor, and put it back down again. Like you're walking in place. And just, again, keep your mind with the soles of your feet and feel these sensations. When your mind wanders away, see if you can just smile, because that's what human minds do. They wander, especially when we're upset or afraid or angry. Just smile at your mind and then bring it back to your soles of your feet. You can actually imagine bringing your mind down to your feet as you walk in place, feeling those steps. Now, what I'm going to invite you to do is find a very small area. Find a very small area around you. It doesn't have to be more than 2 or 3 meters, maybe just 1 or 2 meters. And I want you to make small steps in that area for 2 or 3 minutes. You're not walking to go anywhere. You're just walking to keep your mind with the soles of your feet. Just feel each step. It isn't right or wrong or good or bad. But just see what it's like if you can keep your mind with the soles of your feet. Think about it like an experiment where you're checking out. What's it like when you do this? All right? So just walking around and keeping your mind with the soles of your feet. Obviously, you'll need to have your eyes open. When you run out of space, just walk and turn around and walk back. Just up and down, feeling the soles of your feet. Feeling those solid sense of contact. Now just gather yourself back in front of your computer again, and just again stand there for a moment, feeling the soles of your feet. And just now scan through your whole body. After doing this for just a few moments, how's the energy of your body? After spending some time with the soles of your feet. And again, if anyone wishes to share, I'd like to invite you to share in the chat bar. When you spend a few moments with the soles of your feet, when you try to anchor your mind with the soles of your feet, what is that like? What do you notice? If anyone would like to share in the chat bar. Ted Han says, calm down. Thank you. Nyen says, relax and concentrate. Great. So this is, for example, during COVID, we've been teaching this skill to doctors and nurses in hospitals who are enormously overwhelmed, who are overwhelmed by a workload, and they also feel unsafe. But in order to help them focus and stay in good shape, we teach them to do this when they are walking, for example, from the nurse's station to the next patient, even for 30 seconds. To bring their mind back, because even if the crisis has not been resolved, when we just anchor our minds, we are already stimulating that rest and relax system because we have stopped stimulating the action system. Every moment that we are dwelling on things that frighten us, every moment that we are dwelling on the things that anger us, every moment that we're dwelling on the things that hurt us, we are stimulating the action system. Now, again, I want to emphasize it's 100% normal. It's a normal human brain facing an abnormal and difficult situation. But we can also, and again, I think Nguyen Myo says being in the present moment. That's exactly right. Because usually, even if we're uncertain about the future, the present moment might be a reasonably safe moment, even if the situation out in the world is not good. And we can actually possibly find a way to regulate our emotions so that we bring out our strengths. Remember, these skills by themselves won't change the situation in Myanmar, but that's not the point. The point of these skills is to bring out your strengths and not be in a state of being overly stimulated, where your emotions have taken over and your stress has taken over. Good. Now we're gonna build up on this. We're gonna learn a skill called BBE. This is a wonderful self-regulation skill. So the anchoring with the soles of your feet is a very good way that you could use anywhere, anytime, whether you're out in public, whether you're at work, you're at home, you can use soles of the feet to regulate. This is another one, especially for intense emotions. BBE has 3 steps. We say breathe it, brain it, embrace it. I'm going to talk about each one of these steps. I'm going to explain them to you, and then we're going to practice them right here, right now. Remember, it's BBE. Breathe it with a calming breath, brain it, and we say name it to tame it, and embrace it, soothing your nervous system. Again, we've already talked about breathing, and I explained how the breathing stimulates your rest and recharge system. And there's so many different forms of breathing and so many different techniques. It's really very simple. We did belly breathing already. Another one that you can do is something called 5-5 breathing. And there's research on that specific technique where you can just breathe in for 5 seconds and breathe out for 5 seconds. So it ends up being 6 breaths per minute. Some people do something like 5-1-5, where you pause for a second after you breathe in. There's many different variations on this, and of course, some of you will recognize, oh, this is like meditation. It's like meditation, but it's not meditation. If you like to meditate, if meditate is useful for you, I strongly encourage it. But you don't have to meditate to get the benefits. You can get the benefits just from this kind of breathing. For those of you who are interested in the biology and in the neuroanatomy, check out playlist number 1. Playlist number 1 talks about some of the biology of this and has more details on different kinds of breathing techniques. And I'm going to let you choose how you want to breathe when we practice in a few minutes. I want to talk more about this second part, what we call use your brain to regulate intense feelings. We say name it to tame it. This is a technique that was developed by a neuroscientist named Daniel Siegel at the University of California. He wrote a bunch of books as well. When you feel a strong emotion, you can try to name it to tame it. And now here's how you do that. And I'm going to explain it to you and we're going to practice it. When you feel an emotion, you feel it somewhere in your body. This is very clear. And everybody's a little bit different. You might feel it in your chest, you might feel it in your face, your neck, your shoulders. Every single emotion, it doesn't matter if it's anger, fear, shame, even happiness or pride, every emotion has a feeling in your body. So what you do is you bring your awareness back, because usually we're thinking about someone else or something else. You bring your awareness back, feel the emotion in your body. Oh, I feel it in my cheeks. Oh, I feel it in my throat. I feel it in my chest. Feel the emotion in the body. Breathe in and out one time and name the feeling. So it doesn't, I'm feeling stressed. I feel scared. I feel lonely. And it helps if you actually say it out loud, maybe in just a little whisper to yourself. This is using your brain to regulate intense feelings. Name it to tame it. And it doesn't even, don't worry about whether it's the right name. That's not important. You can say, oh, I'm feeling upset, right? Or again, you could use, some general word. Oh, I'm tired. It doesn't, just the verbal part's the important part of this, not whether it's correct or incorrect. So feel it in your body, breathe in and out once, and name it. And hopefully you name it in a nice voice, not in like, oh, I feel stressed, but like, oh, I'm feeling stressed. The same way you might talk to a friend. And finally, and we're going to practice this a little bit before we do it, we're going to embrace it, because these are what we call safety postures. These help to regulate your nervous system. So we're going to start with something we call the butterfly. Let me ask everybody again, raise your hands up. I want you to raise your hands up in front of you, cross them over, and hook the thumbs. So you have like a little butterfly. This is why we call it the butterfly. Okay? And then all I want you to do is let the butterfly rest on your chest. What we're going to do now is a little experiment. And the experiment is to observe how your body responds, how your nervous system responds when you do this. So again, nobody's watching, nobody's looking at you. So please just try this out. So starting with just 2 hands resting gently. You do not need to move your hands. You don't need to tap or anything like that. Just let them rest here. And just check out, how does your nervous system respond when you do this? For a lot of people, they notice that this is soothing. Now, we're going to try a second posture that's here on the screen, which we call butterfly B. Doesn't matter what we call it. So unhook your thumbs. And if it feels comfortable for you, kind of hug yourself, but not in just let your hands rest on your arms. Again, it might be a little bit higher up toward the shoulder. It might be a little bit lower down toward the elbow. Just experiment and see what feels comfortable for you. Feel free to be creative as well. You might also some people like to use one hand to stroke the other arm, like a friendly caress. You could imagine that these are hands that care about you. These are hands that wish you to be safe. These are hands that wish you well. And then lastly, pulling your hands in. I'm sorry, I'm not sure I can move my camera to get this, but one hand over your heart space, one hand over your belly button. Some people call this Chilton, but I've never been able to figure out where that name came from. And feel free to switch around. It does not matter left hand, right hand, but just see which one feels right for you. And again, it's an experiment. You're like a curious scientist. What happens when you do this? And now we're going to take another minute or two. I want to invite you to continue and please experiment with these 3 postures and just see how it feels. So please experiment on your own and be creative as well. Feel free to do something else. If your body says, hey, try this, go ahead. So just noticing what it's like when you soothe yourself using physical touch. So again, I'd like to ask 1 or 2 people, if you don't mind, to share in the chat bar. What do you notice in your body, in your nervous system, when you embrace yourself, when you use these kind of soothing postures, these safety postures? What do you notice? Estelle finds it easier to breathe. Yeah, so that might be a sense of relaxing. Maytu says feel relaxed for a while. Kin feels released. Jordan says released. Yeah, this is very interesting. I want you to know that when you do this, many of you will be experiencing a physiological reaction. You're not imagining it. This appears to be built into our nervous systems. The Paul Gilbert, and again, there's some, I think it's playlist number 3. I can check for you guys. Paul Gilbert, a British psychologist, has studied the physiology of touch. And obviously, many times we prefer to get a hug from somebody else. And of course, that's great. But this is also about being able to self-regulate and soothe ourselves a little bit right at the moment that we can benefit from it. Thanks for those of you who shared. Yeah, and sometimes Sandar said, sometimes it is the case that emotions will come up when we do this, because if we've been holding emotions down, when we feel safe, or when we feel safer, the emotions will come up. And sometimes actually it's what we need to express those emotions. Sometimes it's not, and we need to close up again. So you decide what's right for you. So now we're going to put these all together. Now we're going to put them all together, and we're going to practice them all together. I'm going to breathe it, brain it, embrace it. All 3 steps of breathing, name it to tame it, using your brain to self-regulate, and embracing it using this technique of the soothing touch. I'm going to ask you to think of something that's stressing you. When you do this, please don't let yourself get overwhelmed. So please don't choose the thing that is upsetting you the most. Just the same way if you go to the gym and you learn a new exercise, you don't choose the most difficult level. Please choose something that's mild or medium, if that makes sense. Don't choose the thing that is the most upsetting thing for you at this moment, because this is like a skill, and the more you practice BBE, the stronger it gets. So you're a beginner, and please give yourself permission to be a beginner at BBE. Okay, so let me ask you to, I want you to bring into mind, so take a moment, again, please let your hands be empty. Take a moment as we sit here together. If you like, feel free to close your eyes and bring into mind something that's bothering you. Some element of the situation, again, something that's mild or medium, not something that is, please don't think of the most upsetting thing. but just bring it into mind enough so that you can feel this energy. Feel the energy of fatigue, or feel the energy of anger or fear or loneliness, or whatever it is for you. And when you can feel that energy, I want you to begin to practice BBE. Just begin with breathing. So again, doing that, you might start to do belly breathing. You might do 5-5 or 5-1-5. Whatever. Full breath in, full breath out. And at the same time you're doing that, brain it. So bring your mind back. Let go of those details of who, what, when, where. Bring your mind back and feel this feeling in your body. Where do you feel it? In your face, in your throat, in your chest, in your tummy? Doesn't matter where. Just bring your attention there, and in a kind, understanding voice, name the feeling. Oh, I'm feeling super stressed. Oh, I feel unsafe. Oh, I feel scared. I feel lonely. I'm exhausted. Whatever, right? Just brain it. Name it to tame it. Breathe in and out and name the feeling. And now offer yourself some touch. Going back to these same positions. Doesn't matter which one. Just pick one. And do these 3 steps together, using the breathing technique that connects for you. Naming the feeling in a kind voice. And offering yourself some soothing, supportive touch. Breathe it. Brain it by naming it to tame it. And embrace it. And of course, if your mind wanders, just bring it back and see if you can stay with this. Just for a few minutes, just 2 or 3 minutes. Breathe it, brain it by naming it, and embrace. And if you like, if you criticize yourself, and we're going to talk about that, for having feelings, you can say, no, I'm a normal human being in an abnormal situation. All my feelings, everything that's happening, it's a normal human response. A lot of other people are feeling the same way as me. I am not alone in this, even if I don't see those other people right near me now. Great. And then again, let go of the exercise, but just take a moment to scan your body. Again, because I want you to let your body teach you. Let your body be the authority. After you practice BBE, how is the state of your body and mind? Is the emotion stronger? Is the emotion weaker? Is the emotion unchanged? What? And again, let me invite you to share in the chat bar. When you practice BBE, what do you notice? Joanne writes, more connection to my body and others. Ken says a kind of weaker the second time, feeling relaxed. Yeah, and I want to encourage everyone to practice this. Jordan says connection to my emotions. I want to encourage everyone to practice this, because this is like a muscle. This is actually a skill. It's a skill of self-regulation. And like any skill, whether that skill is playing tennis or learning to use a spreadsheet or cooking, the more you practice the skill, the better you get at it. We're going to talk a little bit more about other situations where you can practice this, even if you just practice this for 5 minutes at a time. Because we just did it. What we just did right now is I taught it to you, and then I taught it to you in about 10 minutes, and we practiced it for about 4 minutes, which is not a lot. And if you already notice an impact, if you notice that there was an impact on your energy, then that's very encouraging. It means you have the muscle, and all you have to do is develop the muscle. Because remember, this is a muscle of self-regulation that's meant to help you regulate intense stress responses, intense fear, anger, other emotions, so that you bring out your strengths. Because when our strengths work best when our brain is in harmony. So remember, we're not trying to control emotions, and we cannot make the emotions vanish. That's not what we're doing here. Having an emotional response during a crisis is normal. You won't stop being a normal human being. We're just trying to bring out the best of you. That's what BBE is for. All right, and then the next question is always, well, then what? I did BBE, now what do I do? And the key is, and this is the next thing, is you just do the next thing, right? You ask yourself, okay, what can I do right now? What do I need to do right now? Just do the next thing for the next 15 minutes or the next hour, and then you just have to repeat this. During a crisis, everything is very, very narrow in time, and that's actually the next thing we need to talk about. So, one of the things, the first frame we learned was keep calm and carry on, and we can use the soles of the feet. And we can use BBE to bring out our calm, to strengthen our calm, even when we're in the middle of a storm. We have to remember that there is a wisdom in small steps. The human mind runs forward into the future. We are planners, we are preparers, we want to know what's going to happen, and we want to prepare for it. This is normal, this is good. But in a crisis, chaos prevents us from planning. So we will be the most effective when we can focus on what we can do today. We may not like it, but this is one of the limitations of living in a crisis, in a chaotic situation. So this is mental stamina frame number 2. One step at a time, one day at a time. First frame is keep calm and carry on. Second frame is one step at a time, one day at a time. You have to focus on what you can do today. What small steps can I take today? Or what do I need to do today? Because we have to focus on what we can control, on the steps, because when we spend all of our mental energy on things that we can't control, it's going to exhaust us. And then we just do the best we can today. You have to remember that you're only human, that you have limitations. And you repeat it each day. You take the steps you can take today. Now, one of the implications is you're going to have to release your focus on long-term future planning. And for many of you, you're going to have to release a focus on making big decisions. So I was talking to a fellow a few days ago in Yangon, and he and his wife, January the 1st, for the new year, they just opened a new business. They had put all their money into the business, most of their savings into this business. And now, they have no idea what's going to happen. And there's nothing you can do about that. You can't make a plan right now because you don't know what's going to happen. And you have to be able to live with that. Now is not the time to make big decisions. The external situation doesn't allow it. And the future we thought was going to happen probably isn't going to happen. It's going to be some other future, and we don't know what it is yet. There will be a future. We may not like it, but there's going to be one. Best we can do right now is focus on today. What steps can I take today? What can I take tomorrow? Now we have a frame. Oops. I think I just did something. Oh, there we go. All right. One of the things you need to remember is that this situation is a marathon. This is a picture of someone doing a marathon in the desert. I cannot imagine why a person would want to run a marathon in the desert, but there are people who do that. Think about what a marathon runner has to do. A sprint runner uses all their energy because the sprint is going to be quick. A marathon runner has to conserve their energy. They have to preserve their energy so they can run the race all the way to the finish. We don't want to waste energy and be exhausted with distress or with pointless action. So I want to introduce you to something that psychologists call the anxiety tree. And the anxiety tree will help us decide what to invest our energy in when we start to get upset or distressed. So when you start to get upset or distressed, first practice BBE. And then after you practice BBE, ask yourself, what am I worrying about right now? So pick something specific. And then you ask yourself, can I do something about it? Okay. Now, if the answer is no, I'm worried about something and there's nothing I can do about it, there's no step that I can take, what you need to be able to do then is self-regulate or distract yourself. I'm going to talk more about this in a moment. You need to be able, when there's no action that you can take, you are wasting your energy to be upset. It might be normal to be upset. You're a normal human being, but it's not a good use of your energy to be obsessing and worrying about it. Now, it is possible, I beg your pardon, it is possible, it is possible there is a step you can take. Like, I'm worried about, will we have enough water? Well, there is a step I can take. I can buy water. Are the stores open now? Then I'm going to decide. So the question is there an action I can take? If the answer is yes, then I ask myself, can I take this action now or can I take this action later? And if I can take the action now, then I should decide on the action and do it. If I can take, and once I've done the action, then I have to self-regulate. I have to be able to let go of that concern. If the action is something I can do later, then I have to decide when I'm going to act. I'll do this tomorrow. I'll do this in 2 days. I schedule it, and then I still have to self-regulate or distract. In a crisis, we're going to end up spending a lot of time just waiting. There's a lot of things we don't know what's going on, and we're sitting in our homes or we're sitting in our friends' homes, and there isn't anything, I beg your pardon, there isn't anything we can do right now. At that moment, like a good marathon runner, we want to be conserving our energy. We don't want to be wasting our energy. So in ordinary life, we would say that we should be productive. It's not good to be distracted. But in a crisis, especially when the crisis goes on for weeks and for months, distraction is good. We have to distract our minds so that we can conserve our energy. So for example, let me ask you, what are some of the ways that you have been distracting yourself? Can I invite you to type them in the chat bar? Because I know that many of you are already doing it. When you want to take your mind off the crisis, what do you do to distract yourself? Okay, so Joanne is working too much. That's not, is that a form? Well, I guess for some people, work can be a form of distraction. Okay, Ted Han says, listening to music, reading and going to the gym, fang fang. Jordan, exercise. Yeah, exercise is very positive. We're going to talk about that. Swimming. Oh, I'm so jealous. Okay, Okay, great. What else? What are other people doing? I hope everyone has some form of distraction. In fact, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to make a list. Yeah, eating. Yeah, stress eating, normal. Watching a movie, right? So what we have to find neutral or positive distractions. I really want to encourage all of you to avoid obsessing on your smartphones. This is a tool, but it's not a good tool for everything. You know, in English we have this new word in English called doom scrolling. When we're sitting here looking at things, this kind of doom scrolling is a waste of energy, and in fact, it may contribute to exhaustion or injury. I'm going to say more about that in a moment, but please be aware of this. I strongly advise all of you, and I think you already know it, to put a limit on this activity. In a moment, we'll talk about how you do that. So let me invite all of you right now. I'd like you to take a pen and write down 5 or 10 different things that you can be doing to distract yourself, that will help you to pass the time instead of doom scrolling. So there's already a bunch of great ideas. If those, watching a movie, exercise, meditation, connecting with others, but we should all have at least 5 different ways. You don't have to list them in the chat bar, but I want you to list them for yourself. Like you have a piece of paper, and I want you to write down, 5 ideas or 10 ideas. Play with a pet, go for a walk if that's possible for you, talk to a friend, listen to music, read a book. I cannot tell you. I'm a psychologist and I'm an expert in stress, but I cannot tell you what is a good distraction for you. Only you can decide that. So I'd like everybody to make a quick little list. And I want to encourage you, again, I want you to put this list somewhere where you can see it frequently. Maybe tape it to your bathroom mirror, put it by your front door, take a picture of it and make it the home screen on your smartphone. Maybe put a reminder on there, don't doom scroll, right? Absolutely. Housekeeping. I think housekeeping is a great example that sometimes in ordinary life, if we do too much housekeeping, maybe it's not a positive. In a crisis, when we're living through a crisis, cleaning the bathroom can be a very positive distraction. Because again, as I said to you, we don't want to spend our time feeling helpless. The more you focus on the things you can't control, that means the more time you spend feeling helpless. The more time you spend feeling helpless means the more time that your action system is activated, when it doesn't have to be, if you can kind of regulate yourself and focus on something you can do today. So you can clean the bathroom or clean the stove today and then do something else. Do an hour of work and then do something else. Jordan adds, tending to the garden and plants. What is this for you? I want all of you to list. This is such an important time, because when you're taking care of your garden, you're doing something very positive for society, believe it or not. When you are keeping your mind calm and when you are bringing out your strengths, that's actually something very positive that you are doing for the community, because you are maintaining yourself in a state of calm and readiness to be productive when the moment is right. Now, the last few points I want to share with you. In this situation, we have to deal with a high level of self-criticism, self-blame, and guilt. For example, when we have emotions, when we feel afraid or when we feel lonely, we may criticize ourselves. We say, well, why do I feel this way? I don't think other people are feeling this way. What's wrong with me that I have these feelings? Or sometimes we feel like, oh, I should be doing more. I should be doing more to fight, or I should be doing more to help other people. This kind of self-criticism is not useful. It has to do with the fight or flight attacking the ego. And usually, of course, we don't treat our friends this way. When we care about another person, we don't criticize them for their feelings. We are supportive to them. And this is really an important issue. So the next skill is be your own ally. Don't rip yourself down. Although it's very normal. Research shows that self-criticism is very, very normal. See if you can learn how to support yourself as a friend. And it's simple for me to describe, and it's difficult to do, but all of us can learn how to do it. And when people learn how to do this, it actually shows that they are happier and less stressed in the course of normal life. So number one, you have to notice when self-criticism or self-blame are happening. So you have to notice at the moment that you're beating yourself up. Then stop and do BBE. Do BBE for 2 minutes. Again, breathe, name it, right? The second B is brain it by naming it. And you say, okay, I'm criticizing myself. This is a moment of self-criticism, or I'm blaming myself, whatever it is. Embrace it, right? Give yourself some supportive touch. And imagine how you would speak to a dear friend. If you had a dear friend who were criticizing themselves in this way, what would you say to your dear friend? What would you say to encourage them? Would you say, oh, I know you're a good person. You're going to get through this. You're having a normal reaction. This is a very tough situation for everybody. And what would you say to your good friend? So you just, and of course, how would you speak to your friend? Because you probably would not say to your friend, don't be a baby. What's wrong with you? You would be nice to your friend. You'd be kind. You'd be warm. So could you speak to yourself a little bit of the way that you would speak to a good friend? You might even try that right now for a moment. The way you might say to a good friend, I'm here for you. I know you can get through this. It's tough. I get how you feel. Or whatever connects for you. So I want to encourage everybody to try that. We call that being your own ally. So just to summarize, to increase your mental stamina and resilience, keep calm and carry on. When you have intense emotions, regulate them, but recognize yourself as a normal human being. Focus on small steps for today. When no action is possible, allow yourself distraction and relaxation, and be your own ally. Just take it one step at a time, one day at a time. There's a few more points I want to make, and then I'll take some questions. I want to talk about trauma exposure. Now, this webinar is about resilience and mental stamina. Trauma is a huge area, and I have given you some playlists about that. So I'm sure all of you are already familiar with the concept of trauma. When we are in danger, or we see other people in danger, we may experience trauma. When we feel powerless or helpless, we may experience trauma. When we lose our connections with others, we may experience trauma. And everyone responds differently. There's no correct way to respond. If you feel that you have experienced a trauma, I recommend you do 4 things. Number 1, use the tools and skills from this workshop to soothe and regulate yourself. Number 2, recognize that the responses you're having, whether you're having nightmares or stress or anger or fear, your responses are normal responses to an abnormal situation. Really recognize that you are a normal human being. Give yourself permission to be having some difficult feelings. Focus on the steps you can take today, and focus on connecting with others and getting some support. The best predictor of whether a person will suffer a long-term injury from trauma is the social connections they have after they experience the trauma. It's not the trauma itself, but it's the quality of connectedness that people have after the trauma. It's the best predictor of who will develop an injury from that trauma and who will not develop an injury from that trauma. Again, it's a huge area. I hope that all of you will be well and take good care of yourselves. And if you can, avoid trauma exposures. I strongly encourage you. There is a lot of material on social media that if you watch it, it may traumatize you. Sometimes you can't avoid watching it. Sometimes you watch it without realizing it. I strongly recommend you do not watch it over and over. If you find yourself watching a horrifying video over and over, you really need to stop and use the skills in this workshop. You do the soles of the feet, do BBE. You don't want to get caught in this loop because that's really not good for you. If you are able to, again, put the phone down, stop watching the videos. Ask a friend to fill you in about the news, or take turns with a friend. One day your friend watches social media and keeps you informed, and one day you watch it and you keep your friend informed to reduce the risk for both of you. Because you just, honestly, in my opinion, watching the videos doesn't give you additional information. And it doesn't do anything useful for you. If there's something you need to know, the people around you can probably tell you that. Your mind doesn't like the uncertainty, and your mind is telling you, I gotta know, I gotta know. Some of you have to watch these things for work, but again, I strongly recommend you do not watch. When you see a horrible video, don't watch it over and over and over. It's really not good for you. For those of you, increase your resilience by having physical activity. Please try to have as much physical activity as you can. Don't just sit still. Sitting still all day when you have a lot of stress, a lot of energy, it's not good for you. Physical movement releases the energy of stress. It releases it from your body. If you can't go outside, or if you feel scared and don't want to go outside, climb the stairs in your building. Climb the stairs in your building up and down until you sweat. Right? That is fine. That's good physical activity. If you have yoga or qigong, especially for those of you who may have been traumatized, you've been exposed to a trauma, there's very good research evidence that yoga, gentle yoga exercises can help reduce the impact of trauma. So yoga is very good for trauma prevention and for trauma treatment. For those of you who are having difficulty sleeping, please be aware sleep is the best opportunity to recharge. You can use BBE to help you fall asleep, but instead of doing it for 3 minutes, you lay in your bed and you just do BBE for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. I have provided you with playlists that give you a lot of information and a lot of skills about how to sleep. For some of you, if you're really worried, really upset, and you can't sleep, you have to use something that we call focal relaxation skills. On playlist number 4 on the Word document I told you about at the beginning of the webinar, playlist number 4 teaches focal relaxation skills. Those focal relaxation skills are the best scientifically established behavioral method we have for helping you to sleep. Also, during a crisis, sleep when you can. If you need to sleep during the day, sleep during the day. During a crisis, you don't have to stay with the regular routines. And of course, do your best to connect with other people. Connections will bring out your strengths, although you have to be aware of emotional contagion. If the other people are very, very upset, you may need to limit your contact with people who are very upset until they're able to calm down. Otherwise, you may use a lot of energy just by spending time with them. And lastly, of course, if you have any spiritual practices that you have already been doing, if you have prayer, if you have anything that you enjoy doing, I strongly recommend that you do it now. Research shows that spiritual practices give people mental stamina in a crisis. That spiritual practices make people stronger when facing a crisis, and it doesn't matter what religion. It's true of all religions. So I'd like you to take a moment and to think about how would you like to use the ideas that you heard in the webinar today. Let's just write down 1 or 2 ideas. How would you like to use the best ideas you heard in the webinar today? Wonderful.